There is a story that people who love the Dark Knight of Gotham often name, when they are asked, as the darkest story ever told about him, a short and haunting and beautiful tale from more than 30 years ago, a story so acclaimed and so unsettling that it has never quite left the conversation since, a small and perfect and terrible thing that has haunted and moved and troubled everyone who has ever read it, and that is named, again and again, when people speak of the darkest tales ever told. It is a story about madness and sanity, about the thin line that may or may not divide the two, about a good man and a broken one, about the deepest question at the heart of the whole long mythology, the terrible question of whether any of us, any person at all, however decent, might be driven to madness by a single unbearable day. And yet, dark as it is also, in the end, only a story, only ink and shadow and make-believe, and there is nothing in any of it that can follow you here, into the warm and ordinary quiet of your own room, and there is a strange comfort in a dark story, told gently in the dark, the way a frightening tale becomes soft and harmless when it is spoken slowly by a quiet voice while you drift towards sleep. So tonight, slowly and softly and in no hurry at all, we are going to wander gently through the whole of that dark story, retelling it tenderly, dwelling on its shadows and its sorrows and its strange hard-won hope, and we are going to let it carry us off to sleep. So settle in now and make yourself comfortable and pull the blankets up, and if this kind of slow, quiet wander through a dark old story is the sort of thing that helps you fall asleep, you might leave a gentle, like before you drift away, and perhaps tell me down in the comments where in the world you are listening from tonight, and then just let all of it go, and let me tell you, softly and slowly, the darkest story ever written about the Dark Knight of Gotham. Let us begin, as the story begins, with the rain, for the whole of this dark tale unfolds beneath a steady, endless rain, the rain of Gotham, falling on the dark streets and the crowded rooftops, the rain streaking down the tall windows and pooling in the gutters and drumming softly on the roofs of the parked cars. It is a story soaked through with rain, this one, the rain falling on the just and the unjust alike, the rain that softens the hard edges of the city and blurs the lights into halos and turns the whole world grey and gentle and sad. And there is something fitting in that, in a dark story told beneath a soft grey rain, for the rain is the mood of the whole thing, the melancholy that runs beneath its horror, the quiet sorrow that gives it, for all its darkness, a strange and gentle beauty. The rain will fall through everything that follows, on every scene and every sorrow, a steady, gentle presence washing over the whole dark tale. And it is a lovely thing to hold in the mind from the very beginning, the soft grey rain falling on the sleeping city, the gentle sorrow of it, the quiet beauty of the rain. The story opens with the rain falling on a great grim building at the edge of the city, the asylum where Gotham keeps its most dangerous and broken souls, and it opens with the Dark Knight himself driving out to that asylum through the rain, come to visit his oldest and most terrible enemy. For the hero has come, on this rainy night, to try something he has perhaps never quite tried before, to sit down across from the laughing man, the clown, his deadliest foe, and simply to talk to him, to reason with him, to reach him, to try, in a weary and hopeless way, to find some way to end the endless dance of violence between them before it destroys them both. It is a striking way to begin a story about these two great enemies, not with a battle, but with an attempt at conversation, not with violence, but with a weary reaching out, and it sets the whole strange and sorrowful mood of the tale. For the hero is tired, we sense, tired of the endless cycle, the catching and the escaping and the catching again, the wheel that turns and never stops. And he has come to the asylum in the rain, not to fight his enemy, but to plead with him, to say, in effect, that this cannot go on, that one of these days it will end in death, that there must be another way. He comes carrying not a weapon, but a strange and desperate hope. And there is a deep sadness in that hope, in the sight of the great dark hero driving out through the rain, to sit and reason with the laughing man. For we know, watching, that it is almost certainly hopeless, that the clown cannot be reasoned with, cannot be reached, cannot be saved, and that the hero, in his weariness, is reaching for something that is not there. But he reaches for it anyway, and there is a nobility in that, and a terrible sorrow, the sorrow of a man trying to save an enemy he knows he cannot save, trying to end a war he knows will never end, reaching out, in the rain, for a connection that will not come. To understand this opening, and the whole story that follows, we must understand the strange and terrible bond between these two, the hero and the laughing man, the dance that has bound them together for so many years. For they are, in a sense, the deepest of all enemies, and yet also something stranger than enemies, two men locked together by a bond that neither of them fully understands, each defining the other, each unable to exist without the other, each the great fixed point of the other's life. The hero does not kill, and so the laughing man lives, and kills again, and the hero catches him again, and the wheel turns, and turns, and turns, and beneath the endless violence there is something deeper, some terrible mutual need, some awful recognition that binds the two of them together across all the long years. They are opposites, of course, the ordered mind of the hero and the chaotic genius of the clown, the man who imposes meaning on a meaningless world, and the man who insists that the world has no meaning at all, the one who fights for order and the one who serves only chaos. And yet in their opposition they are strangely alike, both of them shaped by terrible loss, both of them wearing masks, both of them creatures of theatre and obsession, so that the line between them, like the line between sanity and madness that the story will explore, is thinner and stranger than it first appears. They are mirror images, the hero and the clown, two answers to the same terrible questions, and their bond is the beating heart of the whole dark story. So the hero comes to the asylum in the rain, and he is led through its grim corridors to the cell of the laughing man, and he sits down across from the figure at the table, the white-faced man with the green hair, and he begins to speak. He speaks quietly, wearily, without anger, laying out the terrible truth of their situation, that the two of them are locked in a cycle that can only end in death, that one day one of them will kill the other, that he does not want it to end that way, that he has come to ask whether there is any other way, whether they might find some path that does not lead, inevitably, to the grave. It is a strange and moving scene, the great enemies sitting quietly across a table, the hero reaching out, the clown silent and still. But as the hero speaks, laying out his weary plea, reaching for some connection, some flicker of understanding, something begins to feel wrong, and slowly the terrible truth dawns on him. For the figure across the table has not moved, has not spoken, has not responded at all, and when the hero, in his growing unease, reaches out and touches the white-faced figure, the paint smears beneath his fingers, and he sees that it is not the laughing man at all, but an imposter, a stand-in, a decoy left behind in the cell, while the real one is somewhere else entirely, loose in the city, already about his terrible work. It is a chilling moment, the discovery of the imposter, for it means that everything the hero has just said, all his weary pleading, all his desperate reaching out, has been spoken to no one, to an empty decoy, while his enemy is free. And it means that whatever the laughing man is planning has already begun, that the hero is already too late, that something awful is even now unfolding somewhere in the rain-dark city. The scene of quiet reaching out turns, in an instant, to dread. The hero standing in the empty cell with the smeared paint on his fingers, knowing that his enemy is free, and that he does not know where or what he is about to do. There is a deep and terrible irony in this opening, that the hero's one attempt to reach his enemy, to reason with him, to save him, is spoken to an empty chair, that the laughing man is not even there to hear it, that the reaching out fails before it can even begin. It sets the whole sorrowful tone of the story, this failure of connection, this reaching for something that is not there, and it foreshadows the deeper failure to come, the impossibility of ever truly reaching the laughing man, of ever saving him, of ever ending the endless dance except in the way the hero most fears. And so the story is set in motion, the hero racing out into the rain to try to find his escaped enemy before he can do whatever terrible thing he is planning, and the laughing man loose in the city, already moving toward his dark purpose, already setting in motion the most terrible scheme of his terrible life. The rain falls, the city waits, and the two great enemies move through the wet, dark night toward the collision that the whole story has been building toward. The hero seeking, the clown planning, and the sense of dread deepening with every passing moment. To understand what the laughing man is planning, and why, we must understand the terrible idea at the very heart of this story, the philosophy that drives everything the clown does, the dark thought he means to prove. For the laughing man has a belief about the human mind, a conviction he holds with all the fervor of a prophet, and it is this, that any of us, any person at all, however good, however sane, however decent and kind, is only ever one bad day away from madness. One truly terrible day, he believes, one day of suffering unbearable enough, is all that separates the ordinary sane person from the raving lunatic. And this, he believes, is the great secret of the world, the truth that everyone else refuses to see. It is a chilling idea and a strangely compelling one, for there is a piece of truth in it, or seems to be, the recognition that we are all more fragile than we like to believe, that our sanity, our decency, our very selves rest on foundations more precarious than we admit, that a single great enough shock might shatter any of us. The laughing man has taken this fragile truth and hardened it into a certainty, a whole philosophy, the conviction that madness is the natural state of things, that sanity is only a thin and fragile crust over the chaos beneath, that everyone, given one bad day, would fall as he fell. And this is not merely an abstract belief for the laughing man, but the very key to who he is, the story he tells about himself, the meaning he has made of his own broken life. For the laughing man believes that he himself was once an ordinary person, sane and decent, and that he was made what he is by a single unbearable day, one terrible day of loss and horror that broke him and remade him into the creature he is now. His whole madness, in his telling, is the proof of his philosophy. the evidence that one bad day is all it takes, that he is not uniquely evil but simply unlucky, a man who had his one bad day and fell, as anyone would fall. And so his terrible scheme, the plan he is even now setting in motion in the rain-dark city, is nothing less than an attempt to prove his philosophy true, to demonstrate it, to show the world, and perhaps above all to show his great enemy, that he is right, that anyone can be broken, that madness is only one bad day away. He means to take an ordinary good man, a decent and sane and admirable person, and to give him one truly unbearable day, one day of suffering terrible enough to break him, and to show that even this good man, even this pillar of decency, can be driven mad, can be made as broken as the laughing man himself. There is a terrible logic to it, and a terrible cruelty, for the laughing man means to prove his philosophy not through argument, but through an act of monstrous cruelty, to break a good man's mind simply to demonstrate that it can be broken, to inflict unbearable suffering on an innocent person simply to prove a point. It is one of the most chilling motivations in all the mythology, this wish to prove that everyone is as broken as oneself, this need to drag others down into one's own madness, this terrible loneliness of the lunatic who cannot bear to be alone in his madness, and so seeks to prove that everyone is mad. And there is, beneath the cruelty, a deep and terrible sadness, for the laughing man's philosophy is, at bottom, a story he tells himself to make sense of his own suffering, to make his own madness bearable, to prove that he is not uniquely broken, but simply the same as everyone else, one bad day from madness like all the rest. If he can prove that anyone can be broken, then his own breaking is not a special horror, but a universal truth, not his own private tragedy, but the way of all things, and there is a desperate loneliness in that, a desperate need to not be alone in his madness, and it is one of the saddest things about him. The whole dark story, then, is really a test of the laughing man's terrible philosophy, an experiment in cruelty designed to prove or disprove the idea that everyone is one bad day from madness, and the question the story asks, beneath all its horror, is whether the clown is right, whether a good man really can be broken so easily, whether we really are all so fragile, or whether there is something stronger in us, something that can hold even against the worst, something that the laughing man, in his madness, cannot see. And it is this question, this deep and troubling question about the strength or the fragility of the human soul, that gives the dark story its weight and its meaning, and that makes it, for all its horror, a story worth telling. Woven all through the dark story, in quiet flashbacks that surface between the scenes of the present-day horror, is the tale of the laughing man's own one bad day, the story of how he might have become what he is, told in soft sepia glimpses of a life before the madness. And it is one of the saddest stories in all the mythology, this glimpse of the man the laughing man might once have been, a struggling and ordinary and hopeful man before the terrible day that broke him. For in these flashbacks we see a man who was, once, entirely ordinary, a failing comedian, a man who dreamed of making people laugh and could not, who stood on the little stages of the cheap clubs and told his jokes to indifferent crowds and could not make them smile. He was not a wicked man, this struggling comedian, only a failing one, a gentle and hopeful and desperate man who wanted only to provide for the people he loved, to make a living, to make people laugh, and who was failing at all of it, sinking deeper into poverty and despair. And he had a wife, this failing comedian, a young wife whom he loved, and she was expecting their first child, and the thought of the coming baby, the thought of a family to provide for, filled the failing man with a desperate need to make money, to succeed, to give his little family the life they deserved. He loved his wife, and he loved the child that was coming, and he was terrified that he would fail them as he had failed at everything else. And it was this fear, this love, this desperate need that led him, at last, to the terrible mistake that would break him. For in his desperation, the failing comedian was drawn into a criminal scheme, persuaded by some hard men to help them with a robbery, to guide them through a place he had once worked. And though every instinct told him not to, though he was a gentleman and no criminal, his desperation and his fear for his family overcame his better judgment, and he agreed, telling himself it was for his wife, for his coming child, for the family he could not bear to fail. It is a small and human and terribly relatable mistake. A good man, driven by love and fear into a single bad decision, and it is the beginning of his ruin. And then, on the day of the terrible robbery, everything went wrong at once, every possible horror falling upon the failing comedian in a single unbearable day. For first he learned that his beloved wife and his unborn child had died, suddenly, in a household accident, taken from him in an instant, so that the whole reason for the robbery, the family he was trying to provide for, was gone, and yet the hard men would not let him withdraw, forced him to go through with the scheme anyway, dragging the grieving man into the robbery even as his whole world collapsed around him. It is a cascade of horror, one blow after another, the very picture of the one bad day the laughing man believes can break anyone. And in the course of the robbery, everything went more terribly wrong still, for the hero appeared, the dark night, and in the chaos and the terror, the failing comedian fled and fell, tumbling into a vat of chemicals, and when he emerged, or so the story goes, his skin was bleached white, and his hair was turned green, and his lips were stained red, and the shock of it all, the grief and the horror and the chemicals and the loss, broke his mind entirely, and the gentle failing comedian was gone, and in his place was the laughing man. His one bad day, the day that took his family and his face and his sanity all at once, had made him what he is. It is a genuinely tragic story, this glimpse of the man before the madness, the gentle failing comedian broken by a single unbearable day, and it casts the whole of the laughing man's horror in a sorrowful light, for it suggests that the monster was once a good man, a loving husband, a hopeful father, broken not by wickedness, but by grief and horror and terrible luck, made mad by his one bad day exactly as he believes anyone would be. And there is a deep sadness in that, in the monster who was once a man, in the madness that was once a grief, in the laughing horror that was once a gentle failing comedian who only wanted to make people laugh and to provide for the family he loved. And yet, and this is one of the most important and most haunting things about the whole story, it is never confirmed that any of this is true, for the laughing man himself, telling his own origin, admits that he is not certain of it, that his own past has become uncertain to him, unreliable, shifting, and he muses, in one of the most famous lines in all the mythology, that if he must have a past, he would prefer it to be multiple choice. And so even this tragic origin, this sorrowful glimpse of the man before the madness, dissolves into uncertainty, may be true, may be a story the laughing man tells himself, may be one of many pasts, none of them certain, so that the man behind the white face remains, At the last, a mystery, a blank, a question with no answer. There is something perfect and terrible in this uncertainty, for it means that we can never quite know the laughing man, never quite pity him fully or condemn him fully, never quite be sure whether he is a tragic figure broken by grief or a monster who invents a tragic past to excuse himself. And this ambiguity is at the very heart of what makes him so compelling and so frightening. He is a mystery, the laughing man, even to himself, a creature with no certain past and no certain self, a blank at the center of the story, and the tragic origin we glimpse may be true or may be a lie, and we will never know, and that not knowing is one of the deepest and most haunting things about the whole dark tale. Now let us return to the present, to the rain-dark city and the laughing man's terrible scheme, and to the good man he has chosen for his cruel experiment. For to prove his philosophy, to show that anyone can be broken by one bad day, the laughing man needed to choose his victim carefully, needed a genuinely good and sane and decent man, a pillar of the community, a person whose breaking would truly prove his point. And the man he chose was the hero's oldest and dearest ally, the honest old police commissioner, a good and decent and steadfast man who had spent his whole life fighting for justice in a corrupt city, and who was, in every way, the very picture of the sane and admirable person the laughing man wished to break. The commissioner is one of the most beloved figures in all the mythology, a weary, decent, unshakably honest old man who has spent his whole career standing for justice, a point of integrity in a compromised world, and it is precisely his goodness, his decency, his unshakable sanity that makes him the perfect target for the laughing man's cruel experiment. For if even this good man, this pillar of decency, this steadfast old soul, can be broken by one bad day, then the laughing man's philosophy is proved, and if the commissioner holds, then it is disproved, and so the whole terrible weight of the experiment falls upon this one good man's shoulders. The commissioner had a daughter, a grown woman, brave and brilliant, and good like her father, and it was through her that the laughing man began his terrible assault, coming to the commissioner's home on a quiet evening, and, in a sudden and shocking act of violence, gravely harming the young woman before her father's eyes. We will not dwell on the cruelty of that moment, for it is dark, and this is a gentle telling, but it is enough to say that the laughing man harmed the commissioner's daughter grievously, wounding her terribly, and doing so with a particular calculated cruelty designed to strike at the commissioner through the person he loved most in the world. It was a monstrous act, and a calculated one, for the laughing man's whole scheme was to break the commissioner's mind, and he began by striking at the old man's heart, by harming his beloved daughter, by inflicting upon the good old man a grief and a horror designed to begin the breaking. And there is a terrible sorrow in it, in the harm done to the brave young woman, in the grief inflicted on her good father, and it is one of the darkest moments in all the mythology, a moment of calculated cruelty aimed at the very heart of a good man's love. The young woman would survive her terrible wounds, though they would change her life forever, and in the long run of the mythology, she would go on to become a hero in her own right, refusing to be defined by the cruelty done to her, turning her suffering into strength, becoming one of the most beloved and admired figures in all the stories. And there is a deep and important hope in that, in the way she refused to be broken by what was done to her, in the way she rose from her suffering to become something greater, so that even this darkest of acts did not, in the end, destroy her, but was answered, across the years, by her own courage and resilience. But that is a story for another night. On this rainy night, in this dark tale, she lies gravely wounded, and her father is taken by the laughing man, and the terrible experiment begins. For having struck at the commissioner's heart, the laughing man took the old man himself, captured him, and carried him away to the place he had prepared for his cruel experiment, an abandoned amusement park at the edge of the city, a decaying carnival of rusting rides and silent carousels and peeling painted faces, the perfect grim theatre for the laughing man's terrible show. And there, in that abandoned place of dead amusement, the laughing man began his long attempt to break the good old man's mind, to drive him mad, to prove his terrible philosophy through the suffering of one good soul. The abandoned amusement park is one of the most haunting settings in all the mythology, and it is worth dwelling on, for it is the grim stage on which the whole terrible experiment plays out, and its decaying strangeness is a large part of the story's dark power. Once, long ago, it had been a place of joy, a carnival full of laughter and light, where families came to ride the rides and win the prizes, and eat the sweet food and laugh together in the sun. But that was long ago, and now it stands abandoned and decaying at the edge of the city, its rides rusting, its lights dark, its painted faces peeling, a ghostly ruin of dead amusement, and the rain falls on it steadily, dripping through the broken roofs, pooling on the silent carousels, streaking down the faded painted smiles. There is something deeply eerie about an abandoned amusement park, a place built for joy gone silent and dark, all that machinery of happiness stilled and rusting, all those bright colours faded to grey, all those painted smiles cracking and peeling in the rain. It is the perfect setting for the laughing man's terrible show, this ruin of joy, this decaying carnival, for it captures the whole spirit of him, the joy turned to horror, the laughter turned to madness, the bright colours of the fair gone dark and strange. And the laughing man has claimed it as his own, this dead carnival, has made it the theatre of his cruel experiment, has strung its faded lights and started its rusting rides, and turned the whole grim place into a stage for his terrible show. The rain falls on the abandoned carnival, and the laughing man moves through it in his purple coat, and the good old commissioner is his captive, held in the strange decaying place, surrounded by the ghosts of joy, the silent carousels, and the rusting rides, and the peeling painted faces. And there is a terrible contrast in it, the good old man held prisoner in a place built for laughter, the grim experiment unfolding amid the ruins of joy, and it deepens the horror and the sorrow of the whole thing, this playing out of cruelty in a place meant for happiness. The laughing man has dressed the whole grim scene with a terrible theatricality, for he is nothing if not a showman, and he has turned the abandoned carnival into a nightmare version of itself, has draped it in strange decorations, has started its rides, has made of the dead place a living nightmare, a funhouse of horror. And this theatricality is central to who he is, this need to make a show of everything, to turn even his cruelty into a performance, to dress his terrible experiment in the trappings of the carnival, so that the whole thing becomes a grim and ghastly show, a nightmare fair, a carnival of madness. There is a particular ride in the abandoned carnival that becomes the center of the laughing man's terrible experiment, a ghost train, one of those dark rides that carry their passengers through a tunnel of manufactured frights, past painted horrors and lurching figures, the kind of ride that is meant to be a harmless thrill, a safe and playful scare. But the Laughing Man has turned this harmless ride into something monstrous, has remade the tunnel of manufactured frights into a tunnel of genuine horror. And it is through this dark ride that he means to break the good old Commissioner's mind, carrying him through a nightmare designed to shatter his sanity. And the whole abandoned carnival, the rusting rides and the peeling faces and the dark ghost train, becomes, in the Laughing Man's hands, a single great machine of madness, a theatre of horror, a nightmare fair built to break a good man's mind. It is a haunting and terrible setting, this dead carnival in the rain, and it is one of the most memorable and most disturbing places in all the mythology, the perfect grim stage for the darkest of stories, the decaying ruin of joy, where the Laughing Man plays out his cruel and terrible show. And yet, even in its horror, there is a strange and mournful beauty to the abandoned carnival, the beauty of decay, of a place of joy gone silent and grey, of the rain falling on the faded painted smiles, of the rusting rides standing still against the dark sky. It is a beautiful and terrible place, this dead carnival, beautiful in its sorrow and terrible in its use, and it lingers in the mind long after the story is over, the ghostly ruin of joy, where the darkest of tales played out, the rain falling forever on the silent carousels and the peeling painted faces. And so the Laughing Man began his terrible experiment, subjecting the good old Commissioner to a long and cruel ordeal designed to break his mind, to drive him mad, to prove the terrible philosophy that anyone can be shattered by one bad day. We will not dwell on the details of the ordeal, for they are dark, and this is a gentle telling. But it is enough to say that the Laughing Man used all his terrible ingenuity to torment the old man, to assault his mind and his heart, to strip away his dignity and his hope, to inflict upon him a suffering designed to snap the last threads of his sanity. He carried the Commissioner through the nightmare ghost train, surrounded him with horrors, tormented him with the grief that had been done to his daughter, did everything in his monstrous power to break the good old man's mind. Through the long ordeal, the Laughing Man kept up a constant terrible patter, taunting and mocking and philosophizing, laying out his dark creed, insisting that the Commissioner would break, that he must break, that anyone would break, that this was the truth of the world, that madness was only one bad day away for everyone. He sang songs, told jokes, delivered strange and terrible sermons on the meaninglessness of everything, on the folly of clinging to sanity and decency in a mad and meaningless world, trying with all his cunning to argue the good old man into despair, to convince him that his goodness was pointless, that his sanity was a joke, that he should give up, let go, surrender to the madness. It is a harrowing sequence, the breaking of a good man attempted before our eyes, the Laughing Man's cruelty and cunning bent entirely toward the destruction of one decent soul, and it is one of the darkest and most disturbing passages in all the mythology. And through it all the Commissioner suffered, genuinely suffered, for he was not a superhuman figure, but an ordinary good man, and the ordeal was terrible, the grief and the horror and the cruelty real and unbearable, and there was no certainty, watching, that he would not break, that the Laughing Man would not prove his terrible point. But here, at the very heart of the story, comes the turn, the moment that gives the whole dark tale its meaning. For the Commissioner did not break. Through all the terrible ordeal, through all the suffering the Laughing Man inflicted, through all the grief and the horror and the cruelty, the good old man held on to his sanity, held on to his decency, held on to himself. He was battered, he was broken in body, he was wounded in his heart in ways that would never fully heal, and yet his mind held, his sanity held, his goodness held, and the laughing man, for all his cruelty and all his cunning, could not break him. And this is the heart of the whole dark story, the disproving of the laughing man's terrible philosophy, the demonstration that a good and decent person need not be broken by suffering, that sanity and decency can hold even against the most terrible cruelty, that we are not all just one bad day away from madness. The commissioner suffered as much as any person could suffer, endured a day as terrible as any the laughing man could devise, and he did not break, did not become a monster, held on to his goodness through all of it, and in doing so he proved the laughing man wrong, proved that the line between the good person and the monster is not so thin as the laughing man believed, that there is something in a good soul stronger than the clown imagines. There is a deep and hard-won hope in this, in the unbroken commissioner, in the good old man who held on to himself through the worst that could be done to him, for it is an answer to the laughing man's terrible philosophy, a proof that we are stronger than the darkness believes, that decency can endure, that sanity can hold, that we need not break. The whole story had built toward the question of whether a good man could be broken by one bad day, and the answer, given by the unbroken commissioner, is no, that goodness is stronger than that the human soul is more resilient than the laughing man's despair allows, and it is a genuinely hopeful answer, shining out from the very heart of the darkest of stories. And there is something quietly magnificent in the commissioner's endurance, in the way this ordinary good man, this weary old soul, this pillar of decency, held on to himself through an ordeal designed to shatter him, refused to become the monster the laughing man wished to make of him, kept his goodness and his sanity against everything. It is not a dramatic heroism, not a matter of strength or violence, but a quiet and stubborn heroism of the soul, the heroism of simply refusing to break, of holding on to one's decency against the worst the world can do. And it is one of the most moving and most hopeful things in all the mythology, the unbroken commissioner, the good man who would not break. At last the hero came, following the trail of his enemy to the abandoned carnival in the rain, arriving to find the good old commissioner, battered and broken but unbowed, his mind still whole, his sanity still intact. The laughing man's terrible experiment already failed, and there is a great relief in the hero's arrival, the sense of rescue, of the ordeal ending, of the good old man saved at last from the clutches of the laughing man. And yet the story does something remarkable in this moment, something that deepens its meaning and reveals the depth of the commissioner's goodness. For as the hero moves to pursue the laughing man, to end his terrible show, the battered old commissioner, wounded and broken from his ordeal, insists upon something, insists with all his remaining strength that the laughing man be taken in properly, by the book, according to the law, unharmed. Even now, even after everything the laughing man has done to him, even after the harm done to his daughter and the ordeal done to himself, the good old commissioner insists that they must do it right, that they must not become like the laughing man, that they must take him in by the law and not by vengeance, to show him and to show themselves that their way is stronger than his way, that decency and law are stronger than cruelty and madness. It is a profound and moving moment, this insistence of the battered old man that even his tormentor must be treated according to the law, for it is the ultimate proof of the commissioner's unbroken goodness, the final demonstration that the laughing man's experiment has failed. For the laughing man had wished to break the commissioner, to make him mad, to drag him down into cruelty and vengeance, to prove that the good old man was no different from himself. And here, in this moment, the commissioner proves the opposite, insisting on law and decency and mercy even toward the man who tormented him, showing that his goodness has held completely, that he has not been broken, that he has not become the monster the laughing man wished to make of him. There is a deep meaning in this, for it shows that the commissioner's victory over the laughing man is not merely that he did not go mad, but that he did not become cruel, who did not surrender his principles, did not answer the laughing man's cruelty with cruelty of his own. Even wounded, even grieving, even after the worst that could be done to him, the commissioner clings to the law, to decency, to mercy, and in doing so he wins a complete victory over the laughing man's philosophy, proving not only that a good man can endure terrible suffering without going mad, but that he can endure it without losing his goodness, without becoming the very thing that tormented him. And it says something deep about the difference between the commissioner's way and the laughing man's way, between the way of law and decency and the way of cruelty and madness. For the commissioner's insistence on the law is not weakness but strength, the strength of a man who will not let the world's cruelty turn him cruel, who will not let suffering make him a monster, who holds to his principles precisely because they are hardest to hold. It is the very heart of what the hero and the commissioner stand for, this refusal to become the darkness they fight, this clinging to decency and law even against the worst. And the commissioner's insistence, battered and broken as he is one of the most moving expressions of it in all the mythology. The hero, honoring the old man's request, sets out to bring the laughing man in by the book, to end his terrible show without becoming like him. And there is a nobility in that too, in the hero's respect for the commissioner's insistence, in his willingness to hold to the law even in his anger, even after everything the laughing man has done. And so the two of them, the hero and the commissioner, having survived the laughing man's terrible experiment, having proved his philosophy wrong, having held to their principles against the worst, move to end the dark show as they would end any other, by the law, with decency, refusing to the last to become the darkness they fight. There is a quiet triumph in all of this, a triumph not of violence but of the soul, the good old commissioner unbroken, insisting on the law, refusing to become the monster, and the hero honoring his request, holding to their shared principles against the worst. It is the moral heart of the whole dark story, this quiet triumph of decency over cruelty, of law over madness, of the unbroken good man over the laughing horror who wished to break him, and it shines out from the darkness of the tale like a small steady light, the proof that goodness can hold, that decency can endure, that we need not become the darkness we fight. And so we come to the ending of the dark story, to one of the most famous and most debated final scenes in all the mythology, a quiet and strange and haunting moment between the hero and the laughing man, alone together in the rain after the horror is over. For the hero pursues his enemy out of the abandoned carnival and into the rain, and catches him at last, and the two of them stand facing each other in the downpour, the great enemies, the ordered mind and the chaotic one, the man of law and the man of madness, alone together at the end of the terrible night. And here the story does something extraordinary, for instead of a final battle, instead of violence, there comes a quiet and weary conversation, the hero reaching out one last time to his enemy, offering, even now, even after everything, to help him, to try to save him, to find some way to end the endless violence before it destroys them both. It echoes the very beginning of the story, the hero's attempt to reason with the laughing man, and it is all the more moving for coming at the end. After all the horror, the hero still reaching out, still hoping, still trying, against all reason, to save the man who has done such terrible things. The hero speaks quietly to the laughing man in the rain, telling him that it does not have to end the way they both know it will end, in death, that there could be another way, that he is willing to help, to try, to find some path that does not lead to the grave. And there is a deep sadness and a deep nobility in this offer, in the hero reaching out to his enemy even now, even after the harm done to the commissioner and his daughter, offering to save the very man who has caused such suffering, unwilling, even at the end, to give up on the possibility of redemption, of connection, of some way out of the endless dark cycle. And the laughing man, for a moment, seems almost moved, almost reachable, almost human, and he responds not with mockery or violence, but with a strange and quiet sadness of his own, acknowledging in his way the hero's offer, and then declining it, saying that it is too late for him, that he is too far gone, that the offer, kind as it is, has come too many years too late. There is a genuine and startling tenderness in this exchange, the two great enemies speaking quietly and sadly in the rain, the hero offering salvation and the laughing man gently declining it, a moment of real connection between them, all the more moving for how rare it is, how impossible it usually is. And then the laughing man tells the hero a joke, a strange and sad little joke about two men in an asylum trying to escape. A joke that is really, beneath its surface, a small parable about the two of them, about connection and isolation, about the darkness and the light, about the way one man walks in fear across the gap between them, while the other holds the light that goes out at the crucial moment. It is a strange and haunting joke, sad and thoughtful, and somehow perfectly fitted to the two of them. And when the laughing man finishes it, something extraordinary happens, for the hero begins to laugh. The two of them, the hero and the laughing man, the great enemies, stand together in the rain and laugh. A shared and genuine laughter, the first and perhaps the only time in all their long war that they have laughed together, that they have shared anything, that the gap between them has closed even for a moment. And it is one of the most famous and most debated images in all the mythology, the two great enemies laughing together in the rain, and no one is quite sure what it means, whether it is a moment of connection or of despair, whether the hero has finally reached the laughing man or finally given up, whether it is hopeful or hopeless, and the story ends there, on that ambiguous and haunting note, the two of them laughing together in the falling rain as the police lights approach. What that ending means, whether the hero finally reaches his enemy or fails to, whether there is any hope for them or none, whether the shared laughter is a moment of grace or of surrender, is left forever open, debated endlessly by those who love the story, and it is fitting that it should be so, for the whole dark tale is finally about the deepest and most unanswerable questions, and it would be wrong for it to end with an easy answer. The two great enemies laugh together in the rain, and the story ends, and we are left to make of that strange and haunting image what we will, the ordered man and the mad one, the light and the dark, laughing together for a moment before the wheel turns again. There is something perfect and haunting in that ending, in the ambiguity of it, in the two great enemies finding, at the last, a strange and sad and momentary connection in the rain, and it lingers in the mind long after the story is over, the image of the two of them laughing together in the falling rain, the light and the dark, the hero and the clown, bound together forever by a bond that neither of them fully understands, sharing, at the last, a single strange and sorrowful laugh in the dark. Now that we have wandered through the whole of the dark story, from the rain and the asylum to the shared laughter in the downpour, let us rest for a while on what it all means, on why this dark tale has haunted people for so many years, on the deep questions it asks and the strange answers it offers. For beneath its horror, this is a story about the deepest things, about madness and sanity, about the strength and the fragility of the human soul, about whether we are all, as the laughing man believes, only one bad day from the abyss. The great question at the heart of the story, as we have seen, is the laughing man's terrible philosophy, the idea that anyone can be broken by one bad day, that madness is only a thin crust away for everyone, and the story sets out to test this idea through the terrible experiment on the good old commissioner. And the answer the story gives, through the unbroken commissioner, is a hopeful one, a rejection of the laughing man's despair, a proof that a good and decent person can endure even the most terrible suffering without breaking, without going mad, without becoming a monster. The commissioner endured a day as terrible as any the laughing man could devise, and he held, and in holding he disproved the whole terrible philosophy. But the story is careful and honest, and it does not offer this hopeful answer too easily, for it acknowledges, through the laughing man's own possible origin, that some people are broken by their bad days, that the failing comedian, if his story is true, was made mad by a single unbearable day, that the laughing man is himself a kind of proof of his own philosophy. And so the story holds the two possibilities in tension, the unbroken commissioner and the possibly broken laughing man, and it suggests that the truth is more complicated than either simple hope or simple despair, that some souls hold and some souls break, that the line between sanity and madness is real but not fixed, that we are more resilient than the laughing man believes, but more fragile than we might like. There is a deep wisdom in this refusal to give a simple answer, in the way the story holds the hope of the unbroken commissioner alongside the sorrow of the broken laughing man, for it captures a genuine truth about the human soul, that it is both strong and fragile, both resilient and vulnerable, that some endure the unendurable and some are broken by it, and that we cannot always know, in advance, which we will be. It is an honest and thoughtful answer to a deep and troubling question, and it is one of the reasons the story has lasted, has haunted, has been debated for so many years. And there is, beneath the question of madness and sanity, a deeper theme still, the theme of the mirror, of the way the hero and the laughing man are two answers to the same terrible questions, two responses to the same losses and horrors. For both of them, in their way, suffered their bad days. Both were shaped by terrible loss, and yet one became the hero, a figure of order and protection, and the other became the laughing man, a figure of chaos and cruelty, so that the two of them are mirror images, the same wound turned to opposite ends, the same darkness answered in opposite ways. And the story asks, quietly, why one broke and the other did not, why one turned to light and the other to darkness. And it does not fully answer, leaving the mystery of it, the strange and troubling closeness of the hero and the clown, the thin line between them. This is part of what makes the shared laughter at the end so haunting, for in that moment the mirror is most visible, the two of them, the light and the dark, laughing together in the rain, revealed as two halves of a single thing, two answers to the same questions, bound together by a bond that neither fully understands. The hero and the laughing man are not simply enemies, but reflections of each other, and the story lets us feel the strange and troubling closeness between them, the sense that the line dividing the hero from the monster is thinner than we would like to believe, that the same losses that made the hero might have made a monster, that the hero and the laughing man are, in some deep way, brothers. And running beneath all of this, beneath the horror and the philosophy and the mirror, there is a deep and pervasive sadness, a melancholy that soaks the whole story like the rain that falls throughout it. For this is, at bottom, a sad story, a story about broken people and terrible losses, about a good man tormented and a madman beyond saving, about the failure of connection and the impossibility of redemption, about two enemies bound together in a dance that can only end in sorrow. And it is this sadness, this deep melancholy beneath the horror, that gives the story its strange and gentle beauty, that makes it, for all its darkness, not merely frightening but genuinely moving, a story that breaks the heart even as it chills the blood. It is worth resting for a while on the story itself, on how it came to be, and why it has endured, for it holds a special place in the history of the mythology, one of the most acclaimed and most influential and most debated stories ever told about the Dark Knight. It was created more than 30 years ago by a celebrated writer and a gifted artist, at a time when the character was being reimagined in darker and more sophisticated ways, and it was, from the moment it appeared, recognized as something special, a story of unusual depth and power, a genuine work of art in a medium that was only beginning to be taken seriously. The story was praised, and it was also controversial, and it has remained both praised and controversial ever since, for its darkness, for the terrible things it depicts, for the harm done to the commissioner's daughter in particular, which many have felt was too cruel, too gratuitous, a moment of darkness that served the story of the men around her more than it served her own. It is a genuine and important criticism, and even the story's own creator has expressed, in later years, some regret about certain of its choices, some sense that it went too far, that its darkness was not always earned, and this ongoing debate is part of the story's legacy, part of what keeps it alive and discussed. And yet, for all the controversy, the story has endured, has remained one of the most beloved and most studied of all the tales, has shaped the way the laughing man is understood ever since, has become a touchstone, a reference point, a story that everyone who loves the mythology must eventually reckon with. Its influence is enormous, its images and ideas woven into countless later tellings, its vision of the laughing man and his philosophy and his possible origin echoing through the whole mythology, so that it is impossible to understand the character now without understanding this story. Part of why it has endured is its brevity and its focus, for it is a short story, a single concentrated tale, unlike the sprawling epics of much of the mythology, and this concentration gives it a power and an intensity that longer stories often lack. It is a small and perfect and terrible thing, this story, focused entirely on its central question and its handful of characters, unfolding across a single rainy night, and there is a power in that focus, in the way it strips everything away to concentrate on the deepest questions, the good man and the mad one, the philosophy and its test, the rain and the carnival and the shared laughter. And part of why it has endured is its beauty, For it is, despite its darkness, a beautiful story, beautifully written and beautifully drawn, full of striking images and haunting moments, and a deep and pervasive melancholy that lifts it above mere horror into something like tragedy, something like poetry. The rain and the abandoned carnival, the sepia flashbacks of the failing comedian, the two enemies laughing together in the downpour. These are images of real beauty, and they give the dark story a strange and gentle loveliness that has kept it beloved even by those troubled by its darkness. It is often named, as we said at the beginning, when people are asked for the darkest story ever told about the Dark Knight, and it deserves the title, for it is genuinely dark, genuinely disturbing, genuinely willing to look into the abyss. And yet it is more than merely dark, for its darkness is in service of something, of a genuine exploration of the deepest questions, of madness and sanity and the strength of the human soul. And it is this depth, this seriousness, this willingness to ask the hardest questions that has made it not merely the darkest story, but one of the greatest, one that has endured and will endure, debated and beloved for many years to come. And there is something fitting in a dark story that is also a beautiful one, a horror that is also a tragedy, a tale that looks into the abyss and yet finds, in the unbroken commissioner, a small, steady light. For that is what the greatest dark stories do, not merely frighten but illuminate, not merely disturb but move. And this one does all of it, dark and beautiful and terrible and hopeful all at once, the darkest of stories and one of the finest, a small, perfect, terrible thing that has haunted and moved and troubled its readers for more than 30 years, and will go on haunting and moving and troubling them for many more. There is a light that shines beyond the darkness of this story, a hope that reaches out from beyond its final page, and it belongs to the commissioner's daughter, the brave young woman who was so grievously harmed on that terrible night, and it is worth dwelling on, for it redeems, in a way, the darkest act of the whole dark tale. For though her wounds changed her life forever, though she could no longer be the hero she had been before, she refused to be defined by the cruelty done to her, refused to be merely a victim, refused to let the laughing man's darkness be the end of her story. Instead, across the years that followed, she remade herself, turned her suffering into strength, found a new way to fight for her city, becoming a different kind of hero, a master of information and technology, the watchful presence who would come to guide and coordinate the whole family of heroes from behind the scenes, her brilliant mind more valuable than ever, her courage undimmed, her spirit unbroken. She became, in time, one of the most beloved and most admired figures in all the mythology, respected and cherished, a hero of a new and different kind, proof that the darkness done to her had not destroyed her, but had been answered, across the years, by her own extraordinary resilience. And there is a deep and important hope in this, a hope that reaches back into the dark story and changes how we understand it, for it means that the laughing man's darkest act, the harm done to the brave young woman, did not, in the end, achieve what he intended, did not break her, did not destroy her, but was answered by her own courage and turned, across the years, into a new kind of strength. The darkness was real, and the suffering was real, and yet it was not the end of her story, and she rose from it to become something greater, and there is a profound hope in that, a hope that even the darkest suffering need not be the end, that we can rise from it, remake ourselves, find new strength and new purpose beyond the worst that is done to us. It is fitting and important to hold this light alongside the darkness of the story, for the story itself, in its final form, does not show us her triumph, ends with her still wounded, still in the hospital, the darkness still fresh. But we know, looking beyond the story, that her darkness was not the end, that she rose from it, that she became a hero of a new kind, and this knowledge softens the darkness of the tale, gives it a hope beyond its final page, reminds us that even the darkest act was answered, in the fullness of time, by courage and resilience, and a refusal to be broken. And her story becomes, in a way, another answer to the laughing man's terrible philosophy, another proof that suffering need not break us, that even the most terrible day need not be the end, that we can endure the unendurable and rise from it stronger. For if the unbroken commissioner disproved the laughing man's philosophy on that terrible night, his daughter disproved it across the years that followed, rising from her suffering to become a hero of a new kind, refusing to let the darkness done to her be the end of her story. Between the two of them, the father who did not break and the daughter who rose from her wounds, the laughing man's despair is answered twice over, disproved twice, defeated twice. There is a deep and gentle comfort in this, in the hope that reaches out from beyond the dark story, in the knowledge that the brave young woman was not destroyed but rose again, in the reminder that even the darkest suffering need not be the end. It softens the darkest of stories, gives it a light beyond its shadows, and it is a comforting thing to hold as we near the end of our long night, the knowledge that the darkness of the tale was answered, in the fullness of time, by the courage and the resilience and the unbreakable spirit of the ones who suffered it, that the light, in the end, was not extinguished but shone all the brighter for the darkness it had passed through. And this is, perhaps, the deepest truth the dark story finally offers, beneath all its horror and all its sadness, that suffering, terrible as it is, need not be the end, that the human spirit is more resilient than the darkness believes, that we can endure the unendurable and rise from it, remade and stronger, that the light is not extinguished by the darkness, but shines all the brighter for it. It is a hopeful truth, hidden at the heart of the darkest of stories, and it is a gentle and comforting thing to carry towards sleep, the light that shines beyond the dark, the courage that answers the cruelty, the spirit that rises, unbroken, from the worst that the world can do. It may seem strange to choose so dark a story to drift towards sleep upon, and it is worth resting for a moment on why a dark tale, told gently in the night, can be so soothing, so comforting, so perfect for the quiet hours before sleep. For there is a paradox in it, that a story of madness and cruelty and horror should be a good thing to fall asleep to, and yet there is a deep truth in the paradox, a reason that dark stories, told softly, can soothe us as gently as any lullaby. Part of it is the safety of it, the way a frightening story, told from the safe, warm distance of our own quiet room, becomes not frightening but fascinating, a thing we can contemplate without fear, a darkness held safely at arm's length. The horror of the story is a contemplated horror, a darkness we can wander through without being touched by it, and there is a strange comfort in that, in the safe exploration of frightening things, in the way the dark tale becomes gentle and harmless when it is spoken slowly by a quiet voice while we lie safe and warm in the dark. Part of it is the melancholy of the story, the deep sadness that runs beneath its horror, For melancholy is a gentle and soothing feeling, a soft and quiet sorrow, and a story soaked in melancholy, in the rain and the sadness and the sorrow of broken people, can wash over us like a gentle, sad music, soothing rather than exciting, calming rather than frightening. The sadness of the story is a gentle sadness, a beautiful sadness, and there is a comfort in it, in the soft grey melancholy that soaks the whole tale, that makes it feel less like a horror and more like a mournful and beautiful song. And part of it, perhaps, is the deep human truth at the heart of the story, the exploration of suffering and resilience, of madness and sanity, of the strength and the fragility of the soul, for these are the deepest and most human of themes, and there is a comfort in a story that takes them seriously, that looks into the abyss and finds, in the unbroken commissioner and the risen daughter, a small, steady light. The story does not flinch from the darkness, and yet it finds, within the darkness, a hope, and there is a deep comfort in that, in a story that faces the worst and still finds a reason for hope. There is a comfort, too, in the resolution of a well-told story, in the sense of a tale complete, of a journey through darkness that comes, at last, to its end, and a dark story told to its conclusion offers exactly this, the comfort of the darkness faced and passed through, of the tale told and finished, of the journey through the shadows come, at last, to its close. We have wandered through the whole of the dark story tonight, from the rain to the carnival to the shared laughter, and there is a satisfaction in that wholeness, in having faced the darkness and passed through it, that settles the mind and readies it for rest. And there is, finally, the simple ancient comfort of a story told slowly in the dark, the oldest comfort there is, the pleasure of being carried along by a quiet voice through a tale, asked to do nothing, to fear nothing, to solve nothing, only to listen and to drift, and to let the story wash over us. It is the comfort of the bedtime story, even a dark one, the comfort of the quiet voice in the dark, the comfort of being told a tale as our eyes grow heavy and the world softens towards sleep, and there are few gentler things in all the world than that. So there is no strangeness, really, in drifting towards sleep upon so dark a story, for the darkness, told gently, becomes soft and harmless and even soothing. The melancholy becomes a gentle, sad music. The horror becomes a contemplated and distant thing, and the whole dark tale becomes, in the quiet of the night, a mournful and beautiful lullaby, a story of shadows told softly in the dark, carrying us gently down towards sleep. Let us dwell for a while on the hero himself, and on the strange and moving thing he does at the beginning and the end of the story, the reaching out, the offer of help, the refusal to give up on his enemy even after everything. For it is one of the most quietly beautiful things in all the mythology, this mercy of the hero, this willingness to offer salvation even to the man who has done such terrible things. And it tells us something deep about who the hero is. For the hero, in this story, does not come to kill his enemy, or even, in the end, merely to catch him, but to save him, to reach him, to offer him a way out of the darkness they are both trapped in. He begins the story by driving out to the asylum to reason with the laughing man, and he ends it by offering, in the rain, to help him, to try to save him, and both times the offer is genuine, is sincere, is an act of real mercy toward a man who has earned no mercy at all. And there is a deep nobility in that, in the hero's refusal to give up on even his most terrible enemy, in his willingness to see, even in the laughing man, a soul that might yet be saved. This mercy flows from the deepest part of the hero, from his own experience of suffering and loss, from his understanding that people are made, not born, that even the worst of them were once something else, that the laughing man, if his story is true, was once a gentle failing comedian broken by a bad day. The hero, who was himself shaped by a terrible loss, cannot quite bring himself to write anyone off entirely, cannot quite give up on the possibility of redemption, and so he reaches out, again and again, even to the laughing man, offering a mercy that his enemy has done nothing to deserve. There is a terrible weariness in the hero's mercy too, for he has offered it so many times, has reached out so many times, has been refused so many times, and yet he goes on offering it, goes on reaching out, unwilling to give up even after all the years and all the refusals. It is the weariness of a man who has tried and failed so many times and yet cannot stop trying, who knows perhaps that his offer will be refused and yet makes it anyway, because to stop offering would be to give up on his enemy entirely, and this the hero cannot bring himself to do. And the story suggests, in its haunting way, that the hero's mercy is not entirely without effect, for in the final scene, the laughing man does seem, for a moment, almost reached, almost moved, responds to the hero's offer not with mockery, but with a strange and quiet sadness, acknowledges the mercy even as he declines it. And there is a terrible poignancy in that, in the sense that the hero's offer does reach the laughing man, does touch something in him, and yet comes too late, cannot save him, cannot undo the years of darkness, so that the mercy is both a success and a failure, reaching the enemy and yet unable to save him. There is a deep meaning in the hero's mercy, in his refusal to give up on his enemy, for it is the very opposite of the laughing man's despair, the very opposite of the belief that everyone is broken and beyond saving. The laughing man believes that everyone is as broken as himself, beyond hope, beyond redemption, and the hero, in his mercy, insists on the opposite, insists that even the laughing man might yet be saved, that no one is entirely beyond hope, that redemption is always, at least, possible. And in this, the hero's mercy is itself an answer to the laughing man's philosophy, a rejection of his despair, an insistence on hope even in the darkest place. And there is something deeply moving in the image of the hero offering mercy in the rain, reaching out to his enemy even after everything, refusing to give up on a soul that everyone else would have written off entirely. It is one of the truest expressions of who the hero is, this mercy, this refusal to give up, this insistence on the possibility of redemption even for the worst. And it shines out from the darkness of the story like a small steady light. The hero's mercy, his offered hand, his refusal, even at the end, even in the rain, to give up on the possibility of grace. Let us turn now to the laughing man himself, and to the deep sadness that lies beneath his horror. For one of the most remarkable things about this dark story is the way it finds, in its most terrible figure, a genuine and moving sorrow, so that the monster becomes, for all his cruelty, a tragic figure, a broken soul, an object not only of fear, but of pity. It is a difficult thing to pity so terrible a figure, and yet the story invites us to, gently, through the sorrowful glimpses of the man he might once have been. For if the flashbacks are true, if the laughing man was once a gentle failing comedian broken by a single unbearable day, then he is a deeply tragic figure, a good man destroyed by grief and horror and terrible luck, made mad through no fault of his own, a victim as much as a monster. And even if the flashbacks are not true, even if they are a story he tells himself, there is a sadness in that too, in a broken man who must invent a tragic past to make sense of his own madness, who cannot even be sure of his own history, who is a mystery even to himself. Either way, the laughing man is a figure of deep sorrow, a broken soul, a tragedy in a purple coat. There is a particular loneliness to the laughing man that the story captures beautifully, the loneliness of the lunatic who cannot bear to be alone in his madness, who needs so desperately to prove that everyone is as broken as himself, that he will torment an innocent man simply to demonstrate that madness is universal. It is a terrible loneliness, this, the loneliness of a soul so broken that it cannot bear to be uniquely broken, that must drag others down into its madness simply to have company there. And there is a deep sorrow in the lonely lunatic, reaching out through cruelty for a connection he cannot otherwise find. And there is the loneliness of his relationship with the hero too, for the laughing man, in his twisted way, seems to need the hero, to define himself against him, to be bound to him, so that the hero is, in a sense, the only real connection in the laughing man's lonely existence, the one fixed point, the one relationship that means anything to him. And there is a terrible sadness in that, in a soul so lonely that its only real connection is with its greatest enemy, in the way the laughing man reaches out to the hero even through their endless war, needing him, defining himself by him, bound to him by a loneliness as much as a hatred. The final scene, the shared laughter in the rain, is so haunting in part because of this sadness, because in that moment the laughing man seems, for once, almost reachable, almost human, almost connected, sharing, at last, a genuine moment with the hero, a real laugh, a real connection, before the wheel turns again and they return to their endless war. And there is a deep sorrow in that fleeting connection, in the sense that the laughing man might, in another life, have been reachable, might have been saved, might have found the connection he so desperately needs, and yet cannot, because it has come too late, because he is too far gone, because the darkness has claimed him too completely. It is a remarkable thing to find such sadness in so terrible a figure, and it is one of the deepest achievements of the dark story, this compassion for the monster, this recognition of the broken soul beneath the horror, this insistence that even the most terrible figure is, at bottom, a suffering human being. It does not excuse the laughing man, does not soften his cruelty, does not pretend that his suffering justifies the suffering he inflicts, and yet it sees him, truly sees him, as a tragic and broken and lonely soul. And there is a deep humanity in that, in the willingness to find the sorrow even in the monster. And there is a strange comfort in that compassion, in the recognition of the broken soul beneath the horror, for it reminds us that even the most terrible figures are, at bottom, human, suffering, broken, that the line between the monster and the man is thinner than we like to believe, that even the laughing man was once, perhaps, a gentle soul who only wanted to make people laugh. It is a sad and gentle and deeply human truth, and it is a thoughtful thing to carry towards sleep, the sorrow of the clown, the tragedy beneath the horror, the broken and lonely soul weeping, perhaps, beneath the painted smile. Let us rest for a while on the deepest truth the story reaches toward, the truth about ourselves, about our own fragility and our own strength. For the story's great question, the question of whether anyone can be broken by one bad day, is not really a question about the laughing man or the commissioner, but a question about all of us, about the human soul, about you and me. And there is a reason the question haunts, a reason it will not let us go, and it is that we recognize in it something true and frightening about ourselves. For we know, if we are honest, that the laughing man's philosophy is not entirely wrong, that we are more fragile than we like to believe, that our sanity and our decency and our very selves rest on foundations more precarious than we admit, that a great enough shock, a terrible enough day, might break any of us. We have all felt, at times, how close the abyss can seem, how thin the crust of our ordinary selves, how a single terrible blow might shatter everything. And the laughing man's philosophy speaks to that fear, that knowledge of our own fragility, and that is why it haunts. And yet the story does not leave us there, in the fear of our own fragility, for it offers, in the unbroken commissioner, the other half of the truth, that we are also stronger than we know, more resilient than the laughing man believes, capable of enduring the unendurable, and holding on to ourselves through the worst. The commissioner suffered a day as terrible as any, and he held, and in holding he shows us that the human soul is not only fragile but strong, not only vulnerable but resilient, that we can endure more than we might believe, that the abyss is not as close as our fears would have us think. The truth the story finally offers, then, is a double truth, a truth about both our fragility and our strength, and it is a wiser and more honest truth than either simple fear or simple confidence. We are fragile, the story says, more fragile than we like to believe, and we are also strong, stronger than we know, and we cannot always be sure, in advance, which we will be, whether we will break or hold when our own bad day comes. It is an honest and humbling truth, this, and there is a strange comfort in its honesty, in the way it neither denies our fragility nor despairs of our strength, but holds both together in a wise and gentle balance. And there is, in this truth, a call to compassion, for if we are all so fragile, if any of us might be broken by a bad enough day, then we ought to be gentle with one another, gentle with those who have been broken, gentle with ourselves. The laughing man was broken, if his story is true, by a day of horror that might have broken anyone, and there is a call to compassion in that, a reminder that those who have fallen might have fallen through no fault of their own, that we ought to pity the broken rather than condemn them, that we ought to be gentle with the fragile souls around us, for any of us might, given a bad enough day, be broken as they were broken. And there is a call to gratitude too, and to humility, for if we have not been broken, if we have held on to our sanity and our decency and ourselves, it is not entirely to our own credit, but is partly a matter of grace, of luck, of not having faced the day that would have broken us. We ought to be humble, then, about our own strength, grateful that we have not faced the worst, gentle with those who have, and this humility, this gratitude, this compassion, is one of the deepest and most human truths the story offers, hidden beneath all its horror. It is a wise and humbling and gentle truth, this double truth about our fragility and our strength, and this call to compassion and humility and gratitude. And it is a thoughtful thing to carry towards sleep, the recognition of our own fragility and our own strength, the gentleness toward the broken, the gratitude for the grace that has spared us the worst, the deep and humbling truth about the human soul that the darkest of stories, beneath all its horror, finally offers us. Let us return once more to that famous and haunting ending, the two great enemies laughing together in the rain, for it is one of the most debated moments in all the mythology, and the many ways people have understood it are worth wandering through as the night deepens. For the story ends on that strange image, the hero and the laughing man sharing a genuine laugh in the downpour, and it refuses to tell us what it means, leaving us to make of it what we will, and people have made of it many things across the years. Some see the ending as a moment of genuine connection, a rare and precious instant in which the two great enemies finally reach each other, finally share something, finally close, for a moment, the gap between them. In this reading, the ending is strangely hopeful, a suggestion that even these two, even the hero and the laughing man, even the light and the dark, can find, at the last, a moment of shared humanity, a genuine connection, a real laugh in the rain, and there is a gentle hope in that, in the closing of the gap, in the shared moment between the enemies. Others see the ending as far darker, as a moment not of connection but of despair, in which the hero, worn down by the endless war and by the horror of the night, finally gives up, finally surrenders to the laughing man's view of the world, finally sees the terrible joke of it all and laughs, not with hope but with despair. In this reading, the shared laughter is a kind of defeat, the hero laughing not because he has reached his enemy, but because he has been, for a moment, dragged down into his enemy's despairing view of the world. And there is a darkness in that reading, a sense of the hero's own near breaking. And there is a darker reading still, whispered by some, that at the very end of the shared laughter, the hero does something we do not quite see, that the story hides, in its final panels, some final terrible act, some resolution to the endless dance that the story will not show us directly. It is a controversial and much debated reading, this, and the story deliberately refuses to confirm or deny it, leaving even this darkest possibility open, so that the ending remains forever uncertain, forever debated, forever refusing to tell us exactly what happened in that rain-soaked final moment. The truth is that the story wants the ending to be ambiguous, wants us to argue about it, wants to leave the final meaning open, for the whole tale is about the deepest and most unanswerable questions, and it would betray that depth to end with an easy answer. The shared laughter in the rain is meant to be a mystery, a moment that resists interpretation, that holds all these readings at once, the hopeful and the despairing and the dark, and it is the richer for its ambiguity, the more haunting for its refusal to resolve. And there is something fitting and something soothing in an ending that refuses to resolve, that leaves the final meaning open, that trusts us to make of it what we will. For it means that the story does not force a conclusion upon us, does not tell us what to think or feel, but leaves us free to sit with the mystery, to hold the many possibilities, to make our own peace with the strange and haunting final image. And there is a gentle freedom in that, in an ending that asks nothing of us but to contemplate it, to wonder at it, to let it be the mystery it is. So the story ends with the two great enemies laughing together in the rain, and we will never quite know what it means, and that not knowing is part of its power and part of its beauty, and it is a strange and haunting and thoughtful thing to carry towards sleep. The image of the two of them laughing in the downpour, the light and the dark, the hero and the clown, sharing a single strange and sorrowful laugh in the rain, its meaning forever open, forever ours to wonder at, as the police lights approach and the rain falls and the story fades gently into the dark. Let us rest, as the night grows late, on the rain that falls through the whole of the dark story, For it is more than mere weather, this rain, more than mere atmosphere. It is the very mood and spirit of the tale, and there is something deeply soothing in it, in the steady falling rain that soaks the whole story from beginning to end. The story opens in the rain and ends in the rain, and the rain falls through all of it, on the asylum and the carnival and the two enemies, a steady, endless, gentle rain that softens everything and blurs everything and washes over everything. There is a reason the story is set in the rain, for the rain is melancholy made visible, sorrow falling from the sky, a soft grey sadness soaking the whole world, and it gives the dark tale its mood of gentle sorrow, its melancholy beauty, its soft grey sadness. The rain falls on the just and the unjust alike, on the hero and the laughing man, on the good old commissioner and the broken clown, washing over all of them, blurring the hard edges, softening the harsh lights, turning the whole world grey and gentle and sad. And there is something deeply soothing in rain, in the sound of it and the sight of it, in the steady, gentle falling of it. For rain has always been one of the great comforts, one of the sounds that soothe us towards sleep, the soft, steady patter of the rain on the roof and the window, the gentle washing of it over the world. And a story soaked in rain, told gently in the night, borrows that soothing quality, the rain of the story blending with the rain we might imagine outside our own window, the steady, gentle falling of it, lulling us softly towards sleep. Picture it now, as sleep draws near, the rain of the dark story, falling steadily on the rain-dark city, on the empty streets and the crowded rooftops, on the great grim asylum and the abandoned carnival, blurring the lights into soft halos, pooling in the gutters, drumming gently on the roofs. Picture the rain falling on the whole of the story, washing over all of it, the horror and the sorrow and the shared laughter, softening everything, gentling everything, turning the whole dark tale grey and soft and sad and strangely beautiful. And let the rain of the story blend with the quiet of your own room, the steady, gentle falling of it soothing you towards sleep, the soft grey melancholy of it washing over you gently, the whole dark story dissolving now into the rain, into the soft grey drift, into the gentle sorrow of the falling rain. For the rain washes everything clean, in the end washes away the horror and the sorrow, leaves only the soft grey quiet, the gentle falling of the rain, the deep peace of the world washed clean and grey, and still beneath the steady, soothing rain. There is a deep comfort in the rain, in the soft grey sadness of it, in the steady, gentle falling of it, and it is the perfect note on which to let the dark story dissolve towards sleep, the rain falling on all of it, washing over all of it, gentling all of it, turning the whole dark tale into a soft grey drift of rain and sorrow and quiet beauty, dissolving now, gently, into the peace of sleep. Let the rain fall then, on the whole of the story, and on the whole of the city, and on the whole of the night, steady and gentle and soft, washing everything clean, soothing everything towards stillness, carrying the whole dark tale gently down into the soft grey quiet, into the peace of the falling rain, into the deep and gentle rest that waits at the end of the long dark night. There is a deep truth about the two great enemies that runs beneath the whole dark story, and it is the truth of the endless wheel, the dance that can never end, the war that turns and never stops. For the hero does not kill, and so the laughing man lives and escapes and kills again, and the hero catches him again and locks him away again, and the laughing man escapes again, and the wheel turns, endlessly, a cycle of violence with no possible ending, and both of them, in their way, know it. This is the weariness that drives the hero to the asylum at the very beginning of the story, the weariness of the endless wheel, the knowledge that the cycle can only go on, catching and escaping and catching again, until one day it ends in death, in the hero killing the laughing man, or the laughing man killing the hero, the only possible resolution to a war that otherwise has no end. And it is this that the hero comes to the asylum to try to change, to break the wheel, to find some other ending, some way out of the endless cycle that does not lead to the grave. But the wheel cannot be broken, or so the story suggests, for the two of them are bound together too deeply, defined by each other too completely, and neither can truly end the other except in the way the hero most fears. The laughing man will not be reasoned with, will not be reached, will not be saved, and the hero will not kill him, will not become a murderer, even to end the endless dance. And so the wheel must turn on, forever, the catching and the escaping and the catching again, the war with no possible peace. There is a deep sorrow in this, in the endless wheel, in the war that can never end, in the two great enemies bound together forever in a dance that neither can break, and it is one of the saddest truths at the heart of the whole mythology. For the hero and the laughing man are trapped, both of them, in a cycle neither can escape, bound together forever, doomed to repeat their terrible dance across all the years, the catching and the escaping and the catching again, forever, with no possible ending, no possible peace, no possible release except in death. And yet there is, perhaps, a strange kind of meaning even in the endless wheel, in the hero's refusal to end it in the only way it could be ended, in his willingness to let the wheel turn on rather than become a killer. For the hero could end the wheel, could break the cycle, could kill the laughing man and be done with him forever, and he does not, will not, chooses instead to let the endless dance go on, rather than cross the line that would make him a monster. And in that choice there is a kind of nobility, a kind of meaning, the hero accepting the endless wheel, the endless war, the endless dance, rather than surrender the principle that separates him from the darkness he fights. So the wheel turns on, at the end of the story, as it has always turned and will always turn, the two great enemies bound together forever, the catching and the escaping and the catching again. And there is a deep sorrow in that, and a strange nobility, and a haunting sense of the endless dance stretching on into the future, beyond the story, beyond all the stories, forever. And it is a sorrowful and thoughtful thing to contemplate as the night draws in, the endless wheel of the two great enemies, the war that can never end, the dance that turns and turns forever in the falling rain. It is worth resting, too, on the enormous mark this dark story left upon the whole legend, on the way it changed, forever, how the laughing man is understood, so that no telling of him since has been able to escape its shadow. For before this story, the laughing man had been many things across the decades: a colourful trickster, a playful prankster, a cackling clown of crime. But this story fixed him, more than any other, as a figure of genuine horror and genuine tragedy, a broken soul of terrible depth, and that vision has haunted every telling of him since. The idea of the one bad day, the notion that the laughing man was made mad by a single unbearable day of loss and horror, has become, since this story, one of the central ideas of the whole character, echoed and elaborated in countless later tellings, so that the tragic possibility this story raised, the gentle failing comedian broken by grief, has become part of the deep fabric of who the laughing man is. And the philosophy this story gave him, the belief that anyone can be broken, that madness is universal, has become one of the defining ideas of his character, the dark creed at the heart of the clown. The story fixed, too, the deep and terrible bond between the hero and the laughing man, the sense that they are mirror images, bound together forever, each defining the other. And this vision of their relationship has shaped every telling of it since, so that the two of them are understood now, more than ever, as two halves of a single thing, locked in an eternal dance. The shared laughter in the rain, the reaching out, the offered mercy, the endless wheel, all of it has become part of how we understand the two great enemies, part of the deep fabric of their eternal war. There is something remarkable in the way a single short story could leave so deep a mark, could shape so completely the understanding of a character who had existed for decades before it and would exist for decades after, could fix, more than any other telling, the deep and tragic and terrible vision of the laughing man that we carry still. It is a testament to the power of the story, to its depth and its beauty and its terrible insight, that it could so completely reshape the understanding of its central figure, could cast so long a shadow over everything that came after. And it is a testament, too, to the way the greatest stories can deepen and enrich the characters they tell, can find in a familiar figure new depths of tragedy and meaning, can transform a colourful villain into a figure of genuine horror and genuine sorrow. This story took the laughing man and found in him a depth and a tragedy that no one had quite found before, and in doing so, it enriched the whole legend, deepened the whole mythology, gave the character a weight and a sorrow that he carries to this day. So the dark story stands not only as a great story in itself, but as a story that changed the whole legend, that reshaped the understanding of its central figure, that cast a long shadow over everything that came after. And this deep and lasting influence is part of what makes it the story people name when they are asked as the darkest and one of the greatest ever told. It found new depths in a familiar figure, gave the whole legend a new weight and a new sorrow, and it has haunted every telling since, the darkest of stories, the one that changed the clown forever. And there is something fitting in that, in a dark story that gave the whole legend new depth, that found tragedy where others had found only villainy, that deepened and enriched the mythology even as it darkened it. For the greatest dark stories do exactly this, not merely frighten but deepen, not merely disturb but enrich, and this one did all of it, giving the whole legend a new and lasting depth, a new and lasting sorrow. And it is a thoughtful thing to rest on as the night draws in, the dark story that changed the legend forever, that found the tragedy beneath the horror, that gave the whole mythology a new and lasting weight of sorrow and depth. Before we come to the very end, let us rest for a while on the sheer beauty of the telling, on the artistry of the dark story, for it is not only what the story says that has made it endure, but how it says it, the beauty of its images, the craft of its telling, the way it renders its darkness in shapes of real loveliness. For this is, despite everything, a beautiful story, beautifully made, and its beauty is a large part of why it soothes rather than merely frightens, why it lingers as a mournful and lovely thing rather than a mere horror. There are the images of the rain, which we have dwelt on, the steady falling rain that soaks the whole story in its soft grey melancholy, blurring the lights into halos, pooling in the gutters, washing over everything. There is the abandoned carnival, the decaying ruin of joy, the rusting rides and the peeling painted faces, and the silent carousels, a place of terrible and mournful beauty. There are the two enemies laughing together in the downpour, an image of strange and haunting loveliness, the light and the dark bound together in the falling rain. And there are the flashbacks, the sepia glimpses of the failing comedian, rendered in soft, faded tones, gentle and sorrowful, the story of the man before the madness, told in images of quiet beauty, the little stages of the cheap clubs, the young wife, the dream of a family, all of it soft and faded and sad. These flashbacks are among the most beautiful and most moving parts of the story. The sorrowful glimpses of the gentle man broken by his bad day, rendered in soft sepia tones that give the whole tragic tale a mournful loveliness. There is a real artistry too in the way the story is structured, in the way it weaves the present-day horror together with the flashbacks of the past, in the way it builds its dread and releases it, in the way it moves from the reaching out of the beginning to the shared laughter of the end, echoing and completing itself. It is a beautifully constructed story, tightly woven, every part serving the whole, and there is a pleasure in that craft, in the elegance of the telling, that lifts the dark tale above mere horror into something like art, something like poetry. And there is beauty in the language of the story, in the strange and thoughtful words the laughing man speaks, in the weary and merciful words of the hero, in the quiet and steadfast words of the commissioner, in the sad little joke of the ending. It is a story that takes care with its words, that finds the beautiful and the haunting phrase, that lifts its darkness with a real and considered artistry of language. And this care, this craft, this beauty of the telling is a large part of why the story has endured, why it lingers, why it is beloved even by those troubled by its darkness. For the greatest dark stories are not merely dark but beautiful, render their darkness in shapes of real loveliness, lift their horror through the beauty of their telling into something like tragedy, something like art, and this story does all of it, dark and beautiful at once, its horror rendered in images of mournful loveliness, its sorrow lifted through the craft of its telling into something like poetry. And it is this beauty, as much as anything, that makes it a good thing to drift towards sleep upon. For the beauty soothes, even where the darkness might frighten, the loveliness of the telling wrapping the dark tale in a gentle and mournful grace. And it is a lovely thing to rest on, as the night draws in, the beauty of the dark story, the rain and the carnival and the shared laughter, the sepia flashbacks and the thoughtful words, the craft and the loveliness of the telling. For the story is beautiful, in the end, as beautiful as it is dark, and its beauty is a comfort, a grace, a gentle loveliness wrapped around its darkness, and it is a soothing thing to carry towards sleep, the beauty of the darkest of stories, the mournful loveliness of the rain and the shadows and the sad sweet sorrow of the whole beautiful terrible tale. There is a way of understanding the whole dark story, gently, as a story not about two men at all, but about the two forces that live within every human heart, the light and the dark, the hope and the despair, the goodness and the cruelty that war within all of us. For the hero and the laughing man, seen this way, are not merely two characters but two possibilities, two answers to the suffering of life, two ways a wounded soul might turn, and the story is really about the choice between them, the choice we all face in our own quieter ways, between the light and the dark. For all of us are wounded, in one way or another. All of us suffer our losses and our bad days, and all of us must choose, in response to that suffering, which way to turn, toward the hope and the goodness of the hero, or toward the despair and the cruelty of the laughing man. The two of them represent the two paths open to a suffering soul, the path of the one who takes his pain and turns it toward protecting others, and the path of the one who takes his pain and turns it toward hurting others. And the story asks us, gently, which path we will choose. And the laughing man's philosophy, seen this way, is the voice of despair within us all, the voice that whispers that everything is meaningless, that goodness is a joke, that we are all one bad day from the abyss, that there is no point in holding on. It is a voice we have all heard in our darkest moments, the voice of despair, the voice that would drag us down into meaninglessness and cruelty. And the story gives that voice a face and a name, the laughing man, and lets us see where it leads, into madness and cruelty and endless sorrow. And the hero and the commissioner, seen this way, are the voice of hope within us all, the voice that insists that goodness matters, that we need not break, that we can hold on to ourselves and our decency against the worst, that the darkness need not win. It is the voice we must listen to in our darkest moments, the voice of hope and endurance and goodness. And the story gives that voice a face and a name too, the unbroken commissioner, and lets us see where it leads, into a quiet and hard-won victory, a small steady light against the dark. So the whole dark story becomes, seen this way, a kind of parable of the human heart, a dramatization of the war between the light and the dark within us all, and the choice we all must make between them. And there is a deep meaning in that, a deep relevance, for the choice the story dramatizes is the choice we all face, in our own quieter ways, the choice between hope and despair, between goodness and cruelty, between holding on and breaking. And the story, for all its darkness, comes down, in the end, on the side of the light, of the hope, of the goodness, of the unbroken soul. And there is a deep comfort in that, in a story that faces the darkness in the human heart, and yet comes down, in the end, on the side of the light, that shows us the voice of despair and yet insists on the voice of hope, that dramatizes the war within us all and yet affirms, through the unbroken commissioner, that the light can win. It is a reassuring truth, hidden at the heart of the darkest of stories, that the darkness in us need not win, that we can choose the light, that the voice of hope is stronger than the voice of despair, and it is a gentle and comforting thing to carry towards sleep, the affirmation from the very heart of the darkness that the light within us can hold. It is worth pausing, before we near the very end, on a quiet truth about the dark story, which is that its true hero is not the dark knight at all, not the caped figure whose name the story bears, but the good old commissioner, the ordinary man who would not break. For though the hero moves through the story, seeking his enemy, offering his mercy, arriving at last to end the terrible show, the real drama, the real test, the real triumph, belongs to the commissioner, and it is his quiet heroism, more than any of the hero's deeds, that gives the story its meaning. For the commissioner's heroism is of a rare and precious kind, not the dramatic heroism of strength or violence or daring, but the quiet heroism of simply enduring, of holding on to oneself, of refusing to break. He does not fight the laughing man, does not defeat him in any physical sense, does not perform any great deed of action. He simply endures, holds on to his sanity and his decency through the worst that can be done to him, refuses to become the monster his tormentor wishes to make of him, and in that quiet endurance, he wins the deepest victory in the whole story. There is something deeply moving in this, in the way the story's true hero is not the extraordinary figure, but the ordinary one. Not the caped and powerful dark knight, but the weary old man, the ordinary decent soul who holds on to himself against the darkness. It suggests that the truest heroism is available to anyone, that it lies not in extraordinary powers or dramatic deeds, but in the ordinary and difficult work of holding on to one's goodness against the worst, of enduring the unendurable without breaking, of refusing to become the darkness one faces. And it is a heroism we might all aspire to, the Commissioner's quiet endurance. For we may never have the strength or the skills of the Dark Knight, may never fight great battles or perform great deeds, but we can, perhaps, hold on to our goodness against the difficulties of our own lives, endure our own hard days without breaking, refuse to let the world's cruelty turn us cruel. The Commissioner shows us a heroism within reach of anyone, the quiet heroism of the good soul that will not break, and there is a deep inspiration in that, a reminder that the truest heroism is not beyond us, but within us. There is a lovely humility in the way the story gives its deepest heroism, not to its famous hero, but to its quiet supporting figure, to the ordinary old man, rather than the extraordinary dark knight. And it says something important about where true heroism lies, not in fame or power or dramatic deeds, but in the quiet and difficult endurance of the good soul. The Commissioner is the true hero of the dark story, and his quiet triumph, his refusal to break, his insistence on decency even against the worst, is the light at the very heart of the darkness, the small steady flame that the whole terrible tale could not extinguish. And there is a deep comfort in that, in the quiet heroism of the ordinary good man, in the triumph of simple endurance over cruelty and madness, in the reminder that the truest heroism is within the reach of anyone who will hold on to their goodness against the dark. It is a gentle and inspiring truth, hidden at the heart of the darkest of stories, and it is a comforting thing to carry towards sleep. The quiet hero at the center of the dark tale, the good old man who would not break, the small steady light of ordinary decency shining out from the very heart of the darkness. There is a deep and troubling undercurrent to the dark story, running beneath its surface, and it concerns the hero himself and his own darkness, and the terrible possibility that he is not so different from the laughing man as he would like to believe. For the whole story circles, quietly, around the thin line between the hero and the clown, the mirror they hold up to each other, and it raises, gently and without ever quite stating it, the frightening question of whether the hero too might be only one bad day or one wrong choice from becoming a monster. For the hero, like the laughing man, was shaped by a terrible loss, was made what he is by a kind of bad day, the day his own parents were taken from him. And out of that loss the hero built his war, his obsession, his whole strange life dressed as a creature of the night, and there is a darkness in that, a madness of its own, so that the hero is not simply the sane opposite of the mad clown, but himself a figure shaped by grief and obsession, himself walking a thin line, himself perhaps closer to the abyss than he would like to admit. And the story lets us feel this, feel the closeness of the hero to the darkness he fights, feel the possibility that the same loss that made the hero might, with a slightly different turn, have made a monster, that the line between them is thinner than the hero would like to believe. It is why the shared laughter at the end is so troubling, for in that moment, the hero seems, for an instant, to slip toward the laughing man's view of the world, to feel the pull of the darkness, to come, for a moment, dangerously close to the abyss he has always fought to stay out of. But the hero does not fall, does not cross the line, holds on, as the commissioner holds on, to his goodness and his sanity and his principles, refuses, even at the end, even in the shared laughter, to become the monster he fights. And this refusal, this holding on, is the hero's own quiet victory, his own answer to the laughing man's philosophy, his own proof that the darkness of his loss did not make a monster of him, that he has held on, across all the years, to the goodness that separates him from the abyss. There is a deep meaning in this, in the way the hero, like the commissioner, holds on to his goodness against the pull of the darkness, refuses to become the monster even though the loss that made him might have made one. For it suggests that the line between the hero and the monster, thin as it is real, that it is held not by nature but by choice, by the daily difficult choice to hold on to one's goodness against the pull of the dark, and that the hero holds that line, day after day, choice after choice, refusing to fall. And it is a hopeful truth, this, beneath its darkness, the truth that even a soul shaped by terrible loss can hold on to its goodness, can refuse the pull of the darkness, can choose, day after day, to be the hero rather than the monster. The hero was made by a bad day, as the laughing man was, and yet he did not become a monster, chose instead to become a protector, and holds that choice, that goodness, that line, against the pull of the darkness, every day of his difficult life. And there is a deep inspiration in that, in the hero who holds the line, who chooses goodness against the pull of the dark, who proves, by his own difficult example, that the darkness of our losses need not make monsters of us, that we can choose, always, to hold on to the light. And so we come, gently, to the end of our long night with the dark story, having wandered through the whole of it, from the rain and the asylum to the shared laughter in the downpour, and having rested on all its shadows and its sorrows and its strange hard-won hope. And it is worth resting one last time as the night draws in on what we have found there in the darkest of stories, for we have found more than mere darkness. We have found a good man who would not break, and a broken man who might once have been good, and a hero who would not give up on his enemy, and a wounded young woman who rose from her suffering to become a hero of a new kind. We have found, beneath all the horror, a deep and honest truth about the human soul, about its fragility and its strength, about the way we might break or might hold when our own bad day comes, and a call to compassion and humility and gratitude, to be gentle with the broken and grateful for the grace that has spared us the worst. We have found a story that looks into the abyss and does not flinch, and yet finds, within the abyss, a small steady light, the unbroken commissioner, the risen daughter, the hero's mercy, the light that the darkness could not extinguish. And we have found, in the mirror the story holds up, a truth about ourselves, about the light and the dark that war within every human heart, and the choice we all must make between them, and the quiet assurance that the light within us can hold, that we can choose, always, the way of hope over the way of despair, the way of goodness over the way of cruelty, the way of the unbroken commissioner over the way of the broken clown. And we have found, in the beauty of the telling, in the rain and the shadows and the sad, sweet sorrow of it, that the darkest of stories can also be one of the most beautiful, that its horror can be rendered in shapes of real loveliness, that it can move us as deeply as it disturbs us, break our hearts even as it chills our blood. It is a beautiful story in the end, as beautiful as it is dark, and its beauty is a grace wrapped gently around its darkness, a mournful loveliness that softens all its shadows. And we have found, perhaps above all, that a dark story told gently in the night is not a frightening thing, but a soothing one, that the horror becomes soft and harmless when it is spoken slowly by a quiet voice, that the melancholy becomes a gentle, sad music, that the whole dark tale becomes, in the quiet of the night, a mournful and beautiful lullaby, washed clean by the falling rain, dissolving gently towards sleep. For we have faced the darkness together tonight, and passed through it, and found on the other side not fear but peace, the deep peace of a story told and finished, of shadows faced and passed through, of the long dark night come, at last, to its gentle close. And we have found, in the end, that the darkest of stories is not, finally, a story of despair, but a story of hope, for all the light it hides within its shadows, the unbroken commissioner, and the risen daughter, and the merciful hero, and the affirmation that the light within us can hold. It looks into the abyss, this story, more deeply than almost any other, and yet it does not despair, finds instead, at the very bottom of the darkness, a small steady flame that will not go out, and there are few more comforting things to carry towards sleep than that. The knowledge that even the darkest of stories comes down, in the end, on the side of the light, that even the deepest darkness holds, at its heart, a small unquenchable flame of hope. So let all of it settle over you now, softly, the whole of the dark story, everything we have wandered through this long night, the rain and the asylum and the carnival, the horror and the sorrow and the hope, all of it gathered gently together now, and let it grow quiet and begin to fade. Let it drift over you one last time, the rain falling on the dark city, the great grim asylum and the abandoned carnival, the sepia glimpse of the gentle man before the madness, the two great enemies laughing together in the downpour, the good old commissioner unbroken, the wounded daughter risen to become a hero, the hero's offered hand of mercy, the light shining beyond the dark. Let all these images gather softly together now, all the shadows and all the small steady lights, and let them blur and soften and merge into one another, until they are no longer separate scenes at all, but only a single gentle drift, a warm grey wash of rain and story carrying you down towards sleep. Let the images grow dim and gentle and soft at their edges, no longer quite pictures now, but only a warm, kind, formless drift, slow and easy and safe, washed clean by the falling rain, dissolving gently into the quiet, into the warmth, into the soft and steady rhythm of your own easy breathing. There is nothing left to fear tonight, no laughter in the rain, and no long dark road to walk, no bad day waiting, and nothing at all moving in the shadows of the quiet city. You have wandered a long way tonight through the whole of the dark story, through its shadows and its sorrows and its strange hard-won hope, and there is nothing more you need to carry now, and nothing at all you must stay awake to hear. It is all told, and you may let it go. Let it all drift over you softly now, the rain falling on the dark streets, the halos of the streetlights blurred in the wet, the great grim building at the edge of the city, and the quiet story unfolding within it. Let the images grow dim and gentle and soft at their edges, the way the world does in the last moments before sleep, until they are no longer quite pictures at all, but only a warm grey drift, kind and formless and slow. None of it is real, and none of it can touch you. The old dark story can keep itself in the shadows without any help from you tonight, and all its sorrows can rest, quietly, where they have rested so long already, and you may set the whole of it gently down, and be at peace. There is nothing to fear here, and nothing to solve, and nothing to do but let your body grow heavy, and your thoughts grow soft, and the last of the day drain slowly away. You do not have to be strong tonight, and you do not have to be watchful, and you do not have to carry a single one of the day's small shadows down into sleep with you. The long day is over now, every last piece of it, and you carried it well, and there is nothing left of it to face or to finish, only the soft dark closing gently around you, kind and safe and yours. Whatever weighed on you today can be set down now, gently, and left in the quiet until morning, for your own bad days, if any came, are behind you now, and this night asks nothing of you but rest. Let each slow breath carry you a little further down, past the last of the day's small worries, past the rain and the shadows and the old dark story, down into the quiet, down into the warmth, down toward the deep and easy rest that is waiting for you now. There is nothing dark that can reach you here, nothing frightening left in all the world, for it was only ever a story, only ink and shadow and make-believe, and it is told now, and finished, and you are safe, warm and safe in your own quiet room, with the gentle dark all around you, and the soft imagined rain falling somewhere far away, and nothing at all to do but rest. Let the rain-dark city grow still and quiet, the rain softening on its streets, the shadows emptying, the last light going dark, the whole city settling into the deep peace of the night. Let the old dark story dissolve gently into the falling rain, all its shadows and its sorrows washed clean and grey and still, all of it fading softly into the warm dark where old stories sleep. And let yourself dissolve gently too, into the soft grey quiet, into the sound of imagined rain, safe and warm beneath the blankets, breathing slow, sinking down, letting go. There is nowhere you need to be, and nothing you need to fear, and no shadow anywhere that can reach you here, only the soft dark and the gentle rain, and your own slow breathing, carrying you gently down toward morning. And if it is a comfort, you might carry with you into sleep the small steady light we found at the very heart of the darkest of stories, the light of the good old man who would not break, the light of the wounded soul who rose again, the light of the mercy that would not give up, the quiet, unquenchable flame of hope that even the deepest darkness could not put out. For that is the truest thing the dark story leaves us, in the end. Not fear, but hope, not despair, but the small steady light that holds against the dark. And it is a gentle thing to carry down into sleep, the quiet knowledge that the light holds, that goodness endures, that even the darkest night gives way, at last, to morning. Rest now and be at peace, and let the long night carry you safely through to the light. Rest now. You have earned this quiet too. Let the far rain-dark city and its old sad story fade into the ordinary, gentle dark of your own room, soft and kind, and yours to sleep in, and there is nothing at all you need to do until morning, but lie still in the warmth and breathe, and drift, and rest. The story is finished, and the rain has washed it clean, and there is nothing left now but the warm dark and the quiet, and your own slow, easy breathing, carrying you gently down. Sleep well now, and let the gentle dark carry you softly down, all the way down, toward the quiet and certain light of morning. Good night.